Brother E here, stepping in for a quick editorial note. Make sure to see the images that are throughout the video, and a special thanks to the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation that helped fund the sculptures through their Inclusive Public Arts Initiative, which will be collaborating with the Cameron Arts Museum in future projects. Also, PBS North Carolina has several stories to see and read on the Boundless exhibit you're about to hear. You can find all these links in the description. And now, back to the show. Hello and welcome to the Brothers and Sisters Like These podcast. I'm your host, Brother E. Today our guest is Daniel Jones, former cultural curator at the Cameron Arts Museum in Wilmington, North Carolina. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And the reason we want you here as our guest today is because you were the former cultural curator at the Arts Museum, which we have a working relationship with. And we found out about this Boundless tour that is to honor the United States Colored Troops Park. That is a permanent exhibit at the museum. And working with the museum for other matters, I came across this. And to be honest, I was just simply not aware of it. And I asked a little bit, how can I find out some more? And that's how we got connected. So I'll give a little bit of background of the exhibit, and then, please follow up where I've missed out. Okay. So what the CAM Museum offers is a dedicated outdoor space that was sponsored by PNC Bank, and it's for the United States Color Troops. And we'll get into that a little bit more. I'll let you speak to that, exactly what that is. But it is to honor the African-American soldiers who fought at the Battle of the Forks Road during the Civil War in 1865. 11 of them are honored there, and it's something that veterans, descendant curators, community members, community leaders have an active role in honoring and participating and being involved. And it was unveiled on November 13th, 2021, and is now permanent. And it was sculpted by Stephen Hayes, the well-known sculptor. So please, Daniel, if you can kind of take in from there and give us a little more details about it.
Yeah, so Cameron Art Museum, as you mentioned previously, in Wilmington, North Carolina, it's a special place, and not only due to the fact of what it provides for the community as far as arts and education programming, but just its actual physical, geographical location. So if you're wondering why a contemporary art museum has a space like this, when they're in the process of creating the Cameron Art Museum, which is about 26 years old now, the grounds that they built on that was donated to them by Bruce Barclay Cameron was the site of a Civil War battle. So it creates this wonderful opportunity where a contemporary art space becomes the steward of a Civil War historic site. And then as a contemporary art space doing what they do best, uses their means and their skills to, create this story, this narrative for the community and larger state and country to engage with. And they did that through a public piece of art, through sculpture, which just opens up the doors for so much future programming, so much narrative interpretation. And so it does honor those USCT soldiers who fought at the Battle of Forks Road, but it also honors the larger African-American narrative in the South. Freedom, citizenship. This is kind of like a microcosm of that larger story. This is just our entry point into it, or their entry point into it. Excuse me. I'm not there anymore. I got to remember that in this conversation. And the reason why I'm not there, I'm in grad school now, but I'm in school. I'm continuing to study similar work that I was doing at the museum.
Excellent.
So there's going to be a lot of overlap, but I'll make sure I clear
Sure.
it up.
No, we understand that. And so that's what's amazing that I did not understand. The actual physical location of the museum is an actual archeological location as well. That's amazing. So just spend another minute just to press that point again, because that really took me for a loop.
Yeah, so the space itself is where the Battle of Forks Road actually happens. So if you go to the site and if you go to the statue where they're standing, where they're pointed. And I know you have some photos. I don't know if it'll show up in this
It
podcast,
will.
but
Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm.
the way the soldiers are marching, if you walk about maybe 20, 30 yards in front of them, you will see remnants of Confederate earthworks or revetments, kind of like trenches.
Physical still to this day
Mhm.
on site.
And
Absolutely.
so
Which is
what you
where
look
they
at,
were charging towards
mhm.
in their famous battle. Okay.
And
Crazy.
what you'll be looking at, of course, are the recreated revetments. You know, they've been dug out, they put new wood there, but you are looking at the original tops of those mounds, which actually kind of dictated where the excavations would be some 4 decades back when they started the research on the grounds, long before Cameron Art Museum even opened. So that makes it so special because it's very rare that you get to see a statue honoring whoever, for whatever reason, be exactly physically in that
That's,
space
yeah.
where they gain their, their fame or notoriety. So
Yeah.
that adds an extra level of place and weight to the story because you are standing where those soldiers would have fought and died.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of leaves me a little speechless, to be honest. It's a little overwhelming in terms of thinking how lucky we are that we can honor something as Americana as what they were fighting on behalf of all of us, including themselves as being United States colored troops.
Yeah.
So there's an incredible amount of research and work behind it, and it'll all show up on the podcast as separate exhibits that you guys can see. But lists of the soldiers' names and great community pictures and stuff, and just an absolute amazing experience. And by the way, the CAM is an amazing location and museum anyway. It's just a great community stuff, tons of projects. So military friendly, have allowed us to have our facilitator, retired Colonel Russell Worth Parker, accomplished writer and former retired lieutenant colonel, and allows us to do writing classes from there for remote access and physical hybrid there. So it's just really just an amazing culture, an amazing group of people and experience. And so I'm very thankful that you were able to take some time out of your day to kind of let us know more about this. So thank you for that. So you have some interesting points that we talked about, starting from emancipation. So
Yeah.
Would you like to give us some detailed background?
Yeah. So as many USCT soldiers that participated in the war, that is a result to the emancipation and allowing Black men formerly enslaved and free to legally sign up and fight. And that doesn't happen until almost a couple years into the war. Prior to that, there's still a lot of fear surrounding arming thousands of Black men, free or formerly enslaved. There's some hesitation around it.
So that, Daniel, let me just say that alone is an incredibly historic event in of itself, right? Just the arming of U.S. colored troops in a time when we're fighting a civil war over, among other things, these types of rights.
Yeah.
So that alone, just to put them in uniform and to say you can die for your country, that's a huge deal in of itself.
Yes, and it's twofold because on one end of things, we know, and not verbatim, but essentially, President Lincoln says, if we can win this war without freeing the slaves, that's something we'll do. But a couple years into the war, it's a lot more lengthy than people had planned. I think the North, with all their federal might, thought they would be able to crush the rebellion quickly. And maybe the South thought if we can cause enough bloodshed, they'll leave us alone, leave us to our own devices. We can go on about our way of life. Well, a couple years into the war, thousands upon thousands dead. You're having a hard time finding recruits and finding people to sign up to fight in a war. What is the next step? What is going to turn this war on its head? And for the North, for the federal government at that time, it's freeing all the enslaved Africans in the rebelling states, because one, that'll be a gut punch to the South's means of production to help them fight the war. And then it's also a way to bolster up the ranks of the Northern armies. Yeah. Now, even though that's a wartime decision, I don't think any of those Black soldiers who signed up were thinking, well, he's only doing this because they're not doing so good in the war. This was a God-given opportunity for them. And they signed up
took it.
in waves. It's crazy to think that, technically speaking, from the day that the emancipation goes into effect, which is January 1st, 1863, the war lasts a little less than 2 years. There's less than 2 more years of the war, right? It ends in 65.
Mhm.
And we get upwards of 200,000 black
Wow.
men, free and formerly enslaved, about 180,000, I believe, on the U.S. colored troop side. And then we have, I think, close to 20,000 naval men um, sign up to fight this war. And I mean, you got to think this is 1865. You got to think of
Yeah,
the
that's
population of the country. That is
yeah.
just completely
And,
changes the tide of the war.
well, and also the buy-in that African Americans men had of, do I really want to sign up for this? Like,
Mhm.
how is this? How is can I really believe in this effort? So
Yeah,
there's a huge amount of risk. It's very Americana. It's
it
very
is.
fighting for your freedom. It's what
Mhm.
we're really founded on. So it's the total spirit, of self-empowering yourself and that. And side note, that the military has always been at the forefront of things like desegregation,
Yeah,
anything that's a barrier, because as a combat veteran, I'll tell you, we just don't have time for friction points like that to
yeah.
break down our progress or break down our mission. So it's weird that you would think a structure that might be more conservative or more rigid like the military is actually always with gender, race at the forefront, because it's just too much time to waste on social agenda stuff that we don't really care about.
That's an
So
interesting
it's
point you're making because you can kind of look back over American history and a lot of major um, social and racial progress does come after major wars, be it the Revolutionary, be it the Civil War, and be it World War II. There's always
that's right.
um, some type of change that comes after that, and I think it's due to um, the large number of people of different backgrounds fighting for something.
Integrating, coming together, you know, common ground, things that unite us versus divide us, and enrich our opportunities. There are a lot of people, whether it's Midwest or on the coast, that just socially and culturally don't really get to meet each other, know each other,
Mhm.
and a lot of them, because of the military, have made connections that last a lifetime. So it is a way to break down stereotypes and myths, and just traveling, meeting people, and especially if it's in a wartime where you just never care about what the person looks like or sounds like on your right and left. You just need a buddy, a battle buddy. And so y'all would just protect each other. So yeah, it is kind of crazy. And I remember Colin Powell explaining how the military does this, and I
Mhm.
thought it was very interesting. So yeah,
And then the other thing is that it is partially forced, but I think that's what gets the wheels turning because going back to emancipation, once they start, putting together these black regiments, this was at a time where you couldn't have black officers, so they needed
that's right.
white men to lead these regiments, and they were having a hard time finding white men that wanted to fight with these regiments. So there's naturally
Yep.
some resistance to this too, but it also makes way for those forced relationships, the seeing someone as your equal on the battlefield, and then once people prove themselves, even though I don't think this is the ground that people should have to prove themselves in, but it's where it happened,
Yeah.
and the amount of respect and the amount of language we have. I can't cite anything right now, but people who spoke so highly of these black soldiers and their courageousness on the
Sure. Yeah.
battlefield, it
Yeah.
did become a proving ground, and that word does spread. So um, there, like I said, there's a little bit of a forced brotherhood at first, but then I think the natural part that comes after that is the
Exactly. Right. And that's why
uh,
you have to break that initial barrier, that friction point of whatever it is. It can be race, gender, religion, whatever it is, but just get past through that and see that, we all have a lot more in common than we have that divides us. And if we're working towards a same mission, especially like in wartime, like these were, then that's what the focus is. So, okay. So that's kind of how they got to their creation, right? For the
mhm.
need and understand that. And so, what was Wilmington's role in this during the war?
Yeah, so Wilmington uh, plays a very significant role in the war, and it becomes increasingly more significant as other Southern Confederate ports start to fall to Union forces. Now, as you and probably a lot of people know, you have larger port towns in the South aside of Wilmington. You have your Savannahs, right? Your Charleston, your New Orleans. But towards the end of the war, Wilmington becomes the last major Confederate seaport standing, deep seaport standing. And then it's like all the weight of the
Yeah,
the last days of the
the
Confederacy is put
focus.
on
Yeah,
Wilmington, because without Wilmington, Robert E. Lee, who has the largest army in the Confederacy, he can't supply his troops so much. So many materials are coming through Wilmington through their port and also their railways. Their railways. They had some of the longest railroads in the world at the time coming through Wilmington that are going straight up into Virginia, into the Richmond area, which is the capital of the Confederacy.
That's right.
So immediately the Confederacy, they put a lot of emphasis on protecting Wilmington. And part of that is Fort Fisher, which was completed before the war, but then the importance and weight of Fort Fisher immediately skyrockets because that's what's guarding the Cape Fear River for the Confederacy. If there's any type of attempt or campaign or attack mission to capture Wilmington, you're going to have to go through that area. And that's exactly what they do.
So how do we get to the Forks Road, the actual battle?
So good question. So Fort Fisher, which is, 15, 20 miles south of Wilmington. I don't know. It's like a 40-minute drive if you're at Cameron Art Museum. If you can capture Fort Fisher, then you can start marching north. And Forks Road is going to be that last battle of that Wilmington campaign that starts with Fort Fisher, which is going to be the huge battle, right? And then, so it took 2 attempts to capture Fort Fisher, the end of 1864 in December, and then they successfully captured it in January 1865. And then that continued Union march towards Wilmington places them on Cameron Art Museum's grounds, February 20th, 1865. Once we get up to this point, it is those 5 black regiments. 3 are essentially leading the charge, but there's 5 black regiments there who are chasing the retreating Confederates that weren't captured along that route from Fort Fisher up to Forks Road. And so those earthworks that I mentioned earlier that you see in that site in front of the statue, that was that last line of defense that the Confederacy entrenched themselves in to try to hold out and
hold the line
around it. Yeah, hold the line and save Wilmington.
So it wasn't happening.
Oh, no. Yeah, they got
it was not happening.
They tried. And the amazing thing about this story is essentially a frontal assault just charging into rifle lines. But I think the beautiful part of this story is when you think that a lot of these USCT soldiers were formerly enslaved, they allowed them to escape during the war. Every day runs the chance of death for them. And this is prior to the war even starting, or some horrendous trauma, right? Being sold, being, violence against them, being killed. So to get up to this point, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, someone's telling you to charge in the rifle lines. Goodness gracious, that's a scary thing. But I think if you can get that far, it's probably just another day for them.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. The motivation of a regular quote unquote soldier that does that compared to someone like the USCT who has skin in the game because it's a part of their personal safety. Yeah, this is definitely their time to pick up the charge. And
it's amazing because it's less than 100 years after the Revolutionary War, but this is slightly the I'm saying this with quotes around it, the American Revolution for black men. This is their give me liberty or give me death. And that's what that charge is.
Yeah.
Right. And so they successfully do this. Those Confederates retreat, they leave, and then they're in Wilmington within the next day or so. Because at that point, I think Cameron Art Museum is probably like, I know it's a 15-minute drive. I don't know the mileage, but it's like a 15-minute drive to downtown. So they're close, right? That's essentially the end of the war right there.
Yep.
And the war does go on for a few more months after the capture and liberation of Wilmington, but it cuts off that last vital supply line that effectively ends the war.
So what does Wilmington look like post Civil War?
Post Civil War, Wilmington is a pretty impressive place, and that's primarily due to the fact that prior to the war, Wilmington had one of the largest black populations in the Southeast. In the 40% of black population.
Yep.
After the war, because a lot of Confederates flee the area, the town actually jumps to a little over 50% black population. The reason why I bring this up too is because the slave practices in Wilmington were very different than what was happening right across the river in Brunswick County, which had more traditional plantation systems.
Right.
In the Wilmington area, it's urban slavery, which means that the skills and crafts
more
have been
production.
enslaved. Yes, and so that floods the workforce.
Yep.
So you have this huge working class, you have a growing middle class,
Yep. Yep.
arts, business
Right.
ownership.
They have certain skills, apprentice skills that are not the same as, say, the rural. You
Mm-hmm.
know. Yeah.
Is
Very good point.
fit for a modern urban,
Yeah.
economically thriving place,
Exactly. Right.
and that's what
Yeah.
happens. And also because of that, you see the government reflect that too. So it's one of the first fusionist governments in the nation. So you have blacks and whites running on the same party ticket, getting elected into government. You have black police officers, firemen, right, boards of aldermen. It just reflects, um, the people who were already there and the
Right.
skills that they had.
Yeah.
So this is going to kind of get us to the Forks Road statue and why it's here in the first place, because naturally this causes fear, backlash, and after Reconstruction ends and we see a wave of violence sweep through the South, to
As a form of
retake,
retribution
yeah,
and pushing back on the changes that other people didn't want to accept. Okay. Yeah.
we see Wilmington be retook. And this is where we can say, the North, they won the physical war, but we know from the years of Jim Crow that the South won the social war after,
Right. Yeah.
after Reconstruction ends.
Because Lincoln didn't want to. Sorry, Daniel. Lincoln didn't want to have like an overbearing presence or force, and wanted to thought maybe dancing, tiptoeing around it might be easier than a direct force. But what it did do was it let them kind of do what they wanted, which in these cases was leading up to segregation and just acts of violence and prejudicial, sentiment and behaviors.
Yeah. And so what happens in 1898, they overthrow the government, and it reshapes the demographics of the town. It runs a lot of black families out. They kill a lot of black families. It runs out some white families too that were voting for these parties. It just completely changes how Wilmington operates, and it changes its visible and physical spaces too. So because of this, in the 1900s, you see a lot of Confederate statues, parks, bench names, people who propagated that 1898 massacre and overthrow. Their names are everywhere. And so naturally, the story and heroics of the USCT on those days kind of gets lost to time. It goes underground, per se, which we like to say because of the excavations. They literally dug the story back out.
That's true, yeah.
80 plus years later. So we're, the city, Cameron Art Museum, and even me, very grateful to Bruce Barkley Cameron for starting that. He was the person that, gave the
lands, the actual location,
he donated
right?
the lands, but prior to him donating the lands, he's the one who starts the research there. He's the person that gives the go ahead, the ribbon cutting almost on sticking those shovels in the ground.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to not have a statue on the story. I think majority of people in Wilmington, the overwhelming majority, didn't even know it happened. So him starting that research as far back in 1980, which was partially led by Dr. Fonville, who was a UNCW professor for many years. This is one of his, I think, big early projects 40 years prior. They're finding these bullets in the ground. They're finding pins that have fallen off of soldiers' uniforms. And they're saying, I think, like, hold on now, something happened out here. Like, we've seen the earthworks, like the original tops of the mounds, which, of course, can't happen naturally on flat, sandy soil. So this is, at some point in time, soldiers have been here, but finding earthworks.
So wait a second, Daniel. Let me interject here. So, am I getting this right? Because this is mostly new to me, minus the little research I've done. I wasn't clear on this. So this the battle and the story behind the USCT that also had to get investigated. That wasn't already. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think there's records of black soldiers being in the area due to Fort Fisher, but
nothing documented about the actual battle or more. Okay, wow, I didn't realize.
There's a time where it was mentioned that black soldiers didn't participate in the Battle of Fort Fisher or this campaign. They might have been around because a lot of black regiments were garrison troops or pioneer troops that go, out ahead of the soldiers to build roads and stuff. But through the uptick of research in the last few decades, we now know the capacity in which they served. And it wasn't just a few hundred soldiers. There's 9 USCT regiments in and around the Wilmington area.
Yeah, and we'll be posting the names that we have that are on the I believe on the website. you can get them of the
Mm-hmm.
regiments, and so it's a few layers to peel here, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at the American spirit in fighting for freedom, and then you're also looking in kind of the cultural historical narrative that
Mm-hmm.
was initially gained but then lost and buried, literally in this case, but then dug up again. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
a very Americana story of resiliency and just dog artists, getting
Yeah.
to the bottom of it. So that's absolutely amazing. So, and that's when the history, the historical background, and then the physical archaeological excavations start happening on
Mm-hmm.
site.
Yeah. So, um, Dr. Fonville, he has some photos from when he originally was surveying the area back in the early 80s. And of course, it's overgrown. It's just a wooded area. There's no development out here. But then you can see where the earth is raised a little bit. And they're like, okay, this is where we're going to dig, right? And then from that point forward, Dr. Fonville just took it upon himself. I mean, he wrote the book too. It's a great book. It's called Glory, The Battle of Forks Road. Definitely should check it out. He's a
Absolutely,
great writer.
we'll share it.
Um, so he had started this project, and you could say he was 20 years into the project when Cameron Art Museum took over the land. So we were working directly with Dr. Fonville.
That's great.
We're working with USCT reenactors because before we even decided what to do with this space, we had developed, or Cameron had developed relationships with USCT reenactors who essentially travel the nation keeping these stories alive. So there's
What
this
about
great.
what about the descendants? Sorry,
We hadn't
Daniel.
got into them yet.
Okay. Finish.
So
I'm sorry. I'm
now
getting ahead of myself.
a couple of the USCT reenactors are descendants, but there wasn't this
Okay.
large push yet to look
Okay.
for them yet. So that kind of became, I believe, and this is long before I got there, still kind of like the historical parentage of what will become the Boundless Project at Cameron Art Museum. You have these USCT reenactors, your story keepers, and then you had Dr. Fonville, who's doing the scholarly work, who was physically in the space, putting shovels in the ground, going through archives. And then you have Cameron Art Museum, a contemporary art museum, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think they're saying, well, what do we do with this information? And naturally, when you come up with historical stories, you got a few options, right? People make plaques, people do some Facebook posts. But Cameron Art Museum, under the leadership of Ann Brennan at the time and Heather Wilson, who's now the current executive director, oh my goodness, they had the foresight and just
to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
To really give it the space it needed physically and the attention it needed. Thank goodness.
And they took it there too. And that's where, the project really got put into motion, and it wasn't just a Cameron thing. Yeah, they were spearheading it, but man, was it a community effort.
That's right. Yep. And that's an important part of it.
From donations, from grants, from just getting the word out, the amount of people who became ambassadors for this before
Right.
It was even close to being installed into the grounds. And that's around the time on the tail end of that, of when I got there.
Okay.
So to kind of briefly speak to the functionality of the museum, they're always rotating their exhibitions, right? There's always new art coming in, which kind of dictates the programs that they have and, the talks and the different just events. Mm-hmm. But with Boundless being a permanent exhibition, it needed that year-long programming. It needed that year-long stewardship. And so that's kind of where I came in. And Dr. Fonville, who I worked with when I first got there, he kind of passed the torch. He did a lot of that scholarly work, the battle by the numbers, who was here, the battle lines, how many people fought, how many people died. And then I came in from a more social perspective of, okay, this battle happened for a couple of days. The war lasted for 4 years, but that's like such a blip in time.
Right.
The real work happens after the war. Once they gain this freedom, where did these people go? What do they do with it? Where are these communities? I mean, there's thousands of men who are here. Their stories still continue in a lot of people today. So that's kind of where I came in. And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself if you had.
No. Let's just talk for a second about these physical statues and sculptures done by Stephen Hayes.
Hmm.
if you could spend just a minute talking about that, because it's a really amazing artwork that he did, as they're all life size and bronze
Yeah.
statues.
So Stephen Hayes is who actually physically brought it to life, right? There's this
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Art Museum IP, this idea floating around their head. It was Stephen who was the artist who, with his hands, shaped this. Oh my goodness, just it captures you. It is so well done. His work, um, the way it just kind of pops on the natural background of those pine trees and the pine straw back there, and the
It's
fact that
really
it's,
representing like the actual course of the battle in terms of what they were
mhm,
physically. I mean, it's the closest I've ever seen to a reenactment in the actual space, and
yes.
you can almost see the soldiers themselves living in that moment.
Hmm.
It's really gives you goosebumps. So it's amazing. So I'm sorry. Please continue.
And Stephen, his medium, he casts, which is already a very intimate form of sculpture making,
Mm-hmm.
and casting live subjects too. That's already bridging the past with where we currently are. A lot of the men that he did cast, some of them were descendants, some of them, please excuse me, some of them were descendants, some of them were reenactors, some of them were both, some of them were community members, all who are part of this larger Southern African American narrative, right? These men that he's casting exist in the manner they do because of the fight of the people that they're portraying in that statue. So I think in him physically casting those people who have connections to this story,
It comes full
uh,
circle, doesn't it?
yeah, he's like permanently
Combining the
cementing,
two. Yeah,
yeah,
that's amazing.
in the
That's
likeness
amazing.
of the
Yeah, in the
Civil War
physical
soldier.
likeness, where so literally the U.S. CT soldiers that fought and were being honored were the ones that enabled, years later, the artist African American,
Hmm.
to sculpture their descendants onto the faces of them. It's an amazing
Yeah,
organization, work art. It's years in the making and so much work behind the scenes. I mean, we're glossing over huge, just all the logistics and the bureaucratic and the red tapes and the funding. Just a whole separate podcast on that. But to get at the real emotional meat of it, which is what you've described. And so, how would you categorize your role with this legacy documentary and also
hmm.
Boundless?
And so as I was mentioning before, when I was hired to kind of help steward the site, along with Heather Wilson, um, it was how do we use this to bridge not only the story of the Civil War, the story of Wilmington, the story of the southeastern part of the state. How do we bridge that with who we are reckoning with this space because we own it or they own it, right? And also take that story and that narrative and use that to bridge the gaps and create meaningful relationships with these Black communities in this area who are still here, who have been here, who have stories of their own, whose stories are directly connected to that fight of these USCT. Um, there's this wonderful opportunity for Cam to leave the walls, leave the grounds of the museum, and go out into the community that or well, yes, we at the time that we say we serve, and use this to develop those relationships, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, vice versa. There's back and forth. It's twofold, right? So we're reaching out to these communities, and these communities are giving us their trust. They're giving us their stories. They're coming back to us, and these relationships still exist. This was never meant to be a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
We heard what happened to your great grandparents, and we want to make a piece of art out of it, and we're going to charge you to come look at it. That was never
The intent,
uh,
yeah.
the intent. Boundless is a
Mm-hmm.
public, it's a free space, um,
Mm-hmm.
and we hope that or what I was trying to do with that space and that statue was use it as a welcoming, an invitation to come learn more about this, but for us to learn more about you. I'm not
Sure,
from
yeah.
Wilmington. That was never my story to tell, but I feel like the town and the city gave me the permission to work with me. And, I wasn't telling their story without their voice. We tried to do everything with them as an active participant. And the amount of people that I was able to meet, that the museum was able to meet, through this type of programming and through this type of research, it's a forever bond at this point now. They're actively a part of the museum forever. And as I hope we are, or Cameron is in their lives too. And so that was the tough part too. Looking for descendants is not easy. A lot of people do genealogy work starting with themselves or a loved one, and they trace it backwards. But we have thousands of names from 1865 that we're trying to connect to the 2020s.
And some were even more common names, just like immigrants who came usually had some of the more common names, and African Americans as well, right? So there's just it gets hard to physically track, on the books, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
you're not wrong on that.
It's not a diverse names from a whole bunch of different ethnicities and countries, so it's easy to pick out. It gets really it can be frustrating to work on it. So it's a crazy amount of work, and so please continue on that. This is very interesting. So
well, no, you're hitting it right on the head, because I wish I still had the the spreadsheet as we were going through these soldiers, because I came in. You would have to see it yourself if you could just guess how many John Smiths from Virginia there are in 1865, white or black, free or
right, that's true.
And so it's like, how am I supposed to find John Smith's great 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 grandchild? What does the paper trail look like? There barely is one, right? You have census records, you have marriage license, but it's not like today where in order to even have a job, all your information gets background checked. You could probably type that person's name in, and every place they've been comes up.
Yeah. So that was a huge challenge, but you did manage to get a significant number of those ties established, right?
Well, we were lucky and we got blessed, because I think for every one person that we will find, the world, the universe, whatever, will send like 3 or 4 back our way. And that's not because of a connection or a contact that we will make. I think as we continue doing this research and the story spread and it was put into different, I don't know what word I'm looking for, different channels that people could access.
Right. Like this, right? Like, spreading this, could make people.
For people to hear about us and contact us with their stories.
Yep.
The nature of genealogy work, even if you're doing your own family, your great grandparents' names, is like you're going to hit a wall. It's just there's some things you just can't find.
Yeah.
But through veteran groups, through USCT Facebook groups, through news segments, right, through other museums collaborating with us, putting our story out there, people
start tying things together. And building little bridges here and there, to fill in the gaps and stuff. So your point being, it truly was a community effort that, individuals could only go so far with the limited data that was there. So, and this is also through the museum, or not the museum, but the site, the excavations that were done and finding old military documents and just combing the land for artifacts, and all these things helped, right? Because it's so rich of items physically in the ground.
Yes. And Dr. Fonville was kind enough when he retired a few years ago. He's still very active in the community, but when he retired from UNCW, he donated a lot of those to the museum. So if you go to the museum, they're actually inside. You can see some of the bullet fragments that were found in the ground, some of those letters, and a few other things regarding the Civil War in the area. Not all exactly from Forks Road, but just part of that larger Wilmington Civil War narrative.
Right, yeah.
And then on top of that, the joys of being a historian in the 21st century, you got fold3.com, which essentially has documented every military record there is to have from all the previous American wars.
Yep.
So there was a one-stop shop to scroll through the regiments that we knew were present at Forks Road.
That's awesome.
That probably took 5 years off the process that it would have been if this was done 20 to 30 years prior.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then Fold 3 is also connected with Ancestry and like newspapers.com. So there's a lot of
overlap and cross collaboration. Yeah. So let me get a couple of things straight here, and I'm going to lead into my next question. So this PNC sponsored USCT park This is the only sculptured park in the nation that's made to honor the United States colored troops. Am I getting that right?
Yep, solely for that purpose. That's why it was created. That's why it's here, and
The
that's
only.
its goal.
Wow. The only. That's crazy. Okay. So even more of a blessing to have it in our North Carolina community. So
Mm-hmm.
what kind of healing or community bringing together did you find through your initial work, and then also seeing through the exhibit as it's publicly displayed now, right? So tell us some of the learning opportunities from knowing descendants and integrating with local leaders who would have never had the opportunity to do so had it not been for this. Some of these learning experiences and healing too that
Mm-hmm.
you've noticed happen directly because of the actual exhibit.
Yeah. Well, first, I'll say healing starts with knowing you don't even know what you need to work on until you got a full uh, grasp or understanding of what you're dealing with. I think so much of the last decade and a half have been dedicated to the 1898 research, right? This massacre was the only successful coup d'etat in American history, right? There was this very traumatic experience that shaped modern Wilmington politics. And
That
so,
uprooted the
mhm,
standing, uh, black majority social
mhm.
standing.
So much research had been done on that, which kind
Mhm.
of guided a lot of the town's self reflection and healing. But then in the last 5+ years or so, having ballast inserted into that picture gives you a more well rounded understanding of what happened there. And also, there's a sense of pride connected to it, right? Because 1898 was this terrible thing, but now we're at the point where we're recognizing, for better or worse, it's kind of blessing and a curse. Part of the reason why 1898 even was happened
Right.
or was planned is because of the success that was happening in Wilmington that directly comes out of the USCT and the Union Army as a whole's victories in the area, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, um, and this is not me downplaying or making light of 1898, but to get, to expand the timeline and recognize the success that was had there, that this town isn't and shouldn't just be known for a tragedy, that it should be known for resiliency
Right.
before
Yeah.
1898 and after, that it should
Right.
be known
Yes.
for a
Hmm.
place where people took it upon themselves to pick up arms and to fight. I mean, I don't think it gets more American than that. It's
Exactly.
like,
You're right. Yeah.
um,
You're right. And
and
us
so,
honoring them today, right, through your
mhm.
work and the work of the others. Yeah. So were there any particular moments that were just really touched you, whether it's through uh, academia or descendants, anything that really it hit home? Like, wow, this is a really powerful
Yeah.
moment here.
So I'll say a couple things. One, my alumni at UNCW, so I did my undergrad. Once this project got off the ground and I was working at the museum, we reached out to the history department, which I graduated from. And each semester they send 1 to 2 interns to work on this. So watching it become integrated with the academics of my alumni, this I was thinking
Hmm.
to myself, man, this would have been such a cool internship if this existed when I was in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
But seeing that bridge
Yep.
between local education and
You,
um,
we never see that, and usually in our own lifespans, right, where something that we're a part of actually becomes something that's taught. So
mhm.
that's amazing. Yes, please
And that's
continue.
on the secondary education level, K through 12. Just about every it's either fourth or fifth grader, I can't remember at this point, uh, would come in the New Hanover County would come to Cameron Art Museum on like an arts education field trip.
Wow.
So even though this is a contemporary art museum, someone going through the New Hanover County school system could not now make it through those 12 years, or even someone who moves here, doesn't matter, without learning a little bit about
Hmm.
uh, the Civil War and specifically the USCT. And this isn't us just choosing to add this story in because of the uptick of this type of research in the last 5 years. Like, this is actually what physically happened on our grounds, and we have a duty to
Yeah.
tell it. And so, I was thinking to myself, man, you only have so much time on these field trips, right? But what's going to happen is the seed's going to get planted when they're in elementary school when they come on this field trip, because no matter what they see in the gallery spaces, at some point in that field trip, they're going to have to go out to Boundless. You get the middle school, you're going to get a little bit more in depth. High school, if they stay local on UNCW, like Boundless has fully integrated itself
Yep.
into Wilmington education. The last thing I would say, which was a big wow moment, was whenever we would have these living history days and the USCT descendants would come out, um, or specifically the USCT reenactors, who some of them were descendants, and a couple of the families that we met along this journey would come out. Seeing them take pictures next to the statue, and also taking pictures next to sometimes their own likeness. One of the men who's cast in that statue, Marvin, he passed away a couple years ago. He was in his 80s. But oh my goodness, I wish I had the picture for you. The joy of him standing next to his likeness in that statue. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, it's a little different for someone like me or someone younger than me. The age of this person, when he became of age to go to college, I'm thinking of my alumni, which got all this on track for me or put this in motion for me, right? Being a history major at UCW, he wouldn't even have had access to UNCW, right?
His lived experience was quite different.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
And it's seeing him stand next to that statue or the likeness of himself, smiling, I mean, ear to ear for a photo, it immediately hit the levels of this space and this statue and what it means for different people. It can't mean the same thing. There's this overarching thematic title that we can all engage with, right? Of what we want this space to do for the community. But the lived experience, which is what Stephen and the museums and Heather and Ann were trying to capture with casting real people, also has a certain amount of dialogue between the people of certain age and certain ages and communities and backgrounds to come into that space and reflect. Because you could say that person in their 80s, when they're standing next to that statue, his life was definitely way more in direct consequence to what happened on that battlefield that day. I'm a little bit further removed, but it's still a short timeline, right? Because those are the people that raised me, not him specifically, but that age group.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a very whoa moment of this means something different to him than me, even though we both love it.
Well, that's that's really, there's just nothing I can add to it, and I won't. But that's just an amazing moment in our history to capture, and legacy to celebrate, and kind of see where we've come from, and really take a look at where we want to go, right, in our future. So it really grounds us into what our values are, and what we want to promote in terms of society that we live amongst our brothers and sisters with. So,
yeah.
All right, Daniel, is there anything else that was particularly struck you about this process or the museum? Anything else or anything that you want to bring up about that we haven't covered?
I'd say one more thing, and I'll keep it brief.
Okay.
Not necessarily an upcoming event. This is an event that already happened, but a couple years into Boundless's lifetime, the museum hosted his first ever Descendants Day, and so that's where we showcased that legacy documentary that we had been working on. But we had descendants and families show up, and I was thinking to myself again, kind of in line with what I previously said about Marvin and his likeness in the statue. When we were shooting this documentary, we went into a community out in Brunswick. One of the guys engraved on the back of the statue, this was his community, and this family and their cousins and all are probably 600 plus strong, just when you think about the full branching of the tree from this person. And
wow.
And I was like, man, so yeah, we had this historic site, but it started to really click in my head that, prior to the installation of the statue, we had walking, living, breathing monuments. These neighborhoods are monuments. These churches are monuments. I was walking around a community where the patriarch of it was the man that's engraved on the back of the statue. And so even outside of the space of coming to see Boundless, that history, those monuments, those historic sites, even though it's not an officially federally or statewide ordained historic site, you don't even know where you're in them sometimes. Yeah.
Right. Probably don't. Yeah.
And that's the real impact. Yeah, we're just telling the story on Cameron's grounds and in that site where the statue is.
But it is part of a larger living, breathing history.
Mm-hmm.
of our past, and that continues, not really of our past, I mean, it continues to expand
Yeah.
with the numbers of descendants and the legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow.
And so
Anything
that was
else?
probably just the last thing that really hit home, that, man, what Cameron had been doing, Dr. Fonville, Heather, and Ann,
Yeah,
um, they they took this story that was way bigger than all of us, and they just kind of turned it around
brought
and
it to
tried to shoot
life.
it. Yeah, shoot it to
Yeah,
the world, to a bigger
yeah,
audience. So
yeah, and that's why I was absolutely like, okay, we're definitely going to have a discussion about this, because this is a real opportunity that I'd like more of our North Carolinians, and also just, other brothers and sisters, regardless of the state, to be aware of, and to go visit, because it's a beautiful site. It's a beautiful location. There's
yeah.
history. There's everything that we want to celebrate coming up with our 250th.
Mm-hmm.
With a lot of things we can disagree, but a lot of things we can agree on. This
Yeah.
is certainly a no-brainer, and we really owe it to everybody who's fought. As a veteran nonprofit, we don't care about anything other than the fact that you served, and so we'd love to honor anybody, and in this case, the USCT. And so it's been a great opportunity, and I'm so happy that there's someone like you that was so involved in it and can keep that legacy alive by discussing and being a guest here with us. So thank you for this opportunity, Daniel.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed
Oh,
this.
it's
This
our
was fun.
pleasure. So there are also a couple of ways that I saw you can help if you're either not in the area or can't, volunteer or work at the CAM, the Cameron Arts Museum. There are ways that you can also donate, or if you're a bigger business or a corporation, be a sponsor. But tell me about the brick paver donation.
Yeah. So in walking up to the site where the statue is, you're on this wide sidewalk, and you'll see chunks of the sidewalk dedicated to that paver. Um, what am I looking for? The paver donation
Mm-hmm.
system. There's probably a better way to say this, but essentially, you could get a customized brick paver that will be
Yeah.
installed into the grounds in front of the statue, and you can make that, brick paver out to anyone to honor your family, the USCT, a
Yeah.
past loved one. Um,
Anonymously too, if you don't
mhm,
want to. Yeah, but it can be dedicated, nominated for somebody or for something.
mhm,
So that is a physical way that you can donate. That money is used to help with the maintenance, the grounds. Now you can
mhm.
also donate just for the maintenance, right? Because this site needs constant maintenance and upkeep, right? So you can also
Mhm.
do that, right?
Yeah, if you go to Cameron Art Museum's website, there's a Boundless page that'll give you access to different types of donations. Of course, you have the brick pavers. You can make a general donation.
Yep.
Kind of an upper level of the brick pavers, there's installed seating all through the park. I
Yep.
believe a few of the seats are still open, that you could purchase one of the
Okay, that's a great
signages for
opportunity.
it.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so you have options. You just
Yeah, and also
make your way over to the
there's
website.
yeah, absolutely. Well, because it's empowering for someone who might not be of age or location to help, but wants to contribute. And this is a real physical way that you can keep up the legacy by physically helping the site. And
Hmm.
also, there's committee that's around this, and there's committee members that you can still be a part of. So there's still a lot of local ways that you can be in an effort to continue this discussion, to continue this project and this work. Right? It's not just strictly tied to the CAM itself. There are
Hmm.
several venues where you can collaborate and be part of it, and maybe you can even spur new conversation about a different work in a different area, or some connection that you'll never know unless you actually go try. So,
Hmm.
my request of our listeners is that just go on their website. We'll have all the links and all the pictures up there for you, and just see what you can find that interests you, and think of if somebody that you might know, or an organization that you might know, that might like to take a closer look at this and fund and support, or work with, or collaborate, and see where it goes. We
Hmm.
just don't know. This was literally in the ground waiting for us to honor it, and
Yeah.
because of the dedication of just a few people, it happened. And now look what it's blossomed into. So, um, Daniel, thank you so much
Thank
for.
you.
No, thank you for your work, your continued in education. We look forward to having you in our community as doing similar work to honor, what makes America America, right? So
Hmm.
um, that's it for me. And as always, our guest, Daniel, to you, the last word.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I always get excited when I get a chance to talk about this. It took up a few years of my life, but it's going to take up even more years with just the communities and the states. It's a story that's not going anywhere, and I was happy to be a part of it and even continue in this way. So, again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Daniel. To our listeners, stay tuned till the next one. Take care, everybody.